Hey everyone, today is Daily Cyber number 237. I'm got Al White, an expert in the field of technology, cybersecurity. He's from the WRI Canada. He's the managing director. Today we're gonna have some conversations about WRI, SaaS, and just what's going on with the industry when it comes to the pandemic and everything that's going on. So grab a coffee, grab a tea, and let's hack at it. I'd like to thank our sponsor for this episode, Usato. Usato is a Canadian-based cybersecurity company that provides 24/7 cybersecurity support and compliance service that align their customers' tolerance for risk, their clients, suppliers, and government contractual mandates. Usato's teams focus on using insights to drive business decisions. There's no need to leave strategies to chance, when insights can be used to show what changes need to be made and make them. Usato offers multiple services to help companies simplify IT, centralize cybersecurity management, and meet compliance standards. Usato can customize their service to work with your existing IT network and programs. For more information, contact Usato at info@uzado.com or visit their website at www.uzado.com. Hey Al, how's it going?
Oh, just fine, Brandon. Thank you so much for inviting me on. I'm thrilled to be here.
Thank you so much. It was great. I know we had an original conversation, kind of what was going on with the industry and a little bit about cybersecurity. How are things going with you?
Things are starting to pick up. Quite honestly, when the pandemic hit and everything shut down, so did the cybersecurity projects. With the type of products that I carry, all the projects that people got involved in were new ones.
Right.
And so other than they were renewing licenses and doing things like that, not a lot of organizations were spending time or could spend time talking about new cybersecurity projects. So things quite honestly died for me for a number of months. Started to show life again in July, a little bit more in August, and after Labor Day, things started to pick up. So we're getting back to some semblance of normalcy, I think.
You think so? Do you think now, because of companies now, the economy is starting to pick up, things are starting to go now, people are starting to look at kind of investing it back into cybersecurity and technology?
I think so. Plus the fact that they spent the first few months getting used to people working from home and making sure that their network could handle the additional traffic and just trying to figure out what their new normal was. So as a result, a lot of people wanted to have conversations, but the C-level wouldn't release funds for new projects, and so things really just died. And despite what I was telling them about the fact that the bad guys were working overtime as soon as you sent everybody home, they wanted to do stuff, but their hands were tied.
Now, what type of risk do you say is associated to that? Like, if the bad guys are working overtime now, the good guys are just swamped. What do you see like some of the risks?
Well, I see the risk as actually it's huge right now. With the number of people that are working from home, they're sitting behind home routers that have no security. They're not used to, a lot of them anyway, are not used to or calling in remotely, and so there's all kinds of opportunity for the bad guys to jump in there and to steal data and to compromise organizations. It's a very scary time right now, I think, anyway.
So now you talked about like modems, like home users. Modems are kind of one of the things like modems and routers and people have at home. What's that concern of, like, if there's some home users that are here that have now transitioned, what are some concerns that they should be looking at?
Well, first of all, I think that the number one thing they should be doing is making sure that their antivirus is up to date. Mm-hmm. I've been reading that a lot of people don't have antivirus or don't have it up to date. So that's a first start. The organization hopefully has set them up on some sort of virtual private network so that they aren't just traversing the internet to get to the corporate resources. And then, there's a lot of training that is involved in making sure that people don't fall into the traps that are all over the place out there, especially out in the wild in the internet. It's absolute crazy times out there.
Now, you're saying the traps. Like, what's some examples of traps they have to be mindful of?
Well, you know what? I've quite honestly, I fell into one myself a couple of weeks ago. What the bad guys do in a lot of situations is they realize that a lot of people are trying to do 10 things at the same time, and especially right now, a lot of people have their kids at home, and they're getting used to working from home. There's all kinds of different distractions, so you're trying to juggle 15 things at the same time while you're getting access to the corporate network. And then all of a sudden, if a pop-up shows up saying, "Oh, it's time to update whatever," a lot of times, and this is what the one that got me is, it was time to update something. The pop-up said, so I just clicked OK, and as soon as I clicked OK, I went, oh no, I can't believe I did that. And I ended up with a virus that it took 2 or 3 different antiviruses to find one that would get rid of that virus on my Mac.
Oh wow, okay. So now this is something for you guys listening and the guys thinking that, well, IT guys and security guys, they're fine, they won't do it. Everyone can get caught, right? And that's the case. And I'm not innocent for myself. Like, I've got caught where there's times where, you're deep into something, notifications popping up, things are popping up, and you just kind of you click on it just quickly, right? Not thinking. And fortunate, knock on wood, right? Nothing's happened to me. But after the fact, it's always that, oh, what did I just click on? What was that?
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. It's just craziness now. And I was reading just the other day that the number of cyber attacks that have happened in the first half of 2020 are more than what we had all of last year. So the bad guys are working overtime, and it's just crazy.
Which would make sense, right? Because now, like we and us as security experts, and I'm sure a lot of people are educated now, the attack surface has changed. It's spread out. Where companies used to have it internally, used to have a control, used to have perimeter firewalls, you have to all that, and it's all in this environment. No, don't get me over that multiple locations, but it's all in this kind of corporate environment. But now you've got everyone spread out. Everyone's home. Everyone's kind of, their own home network. And yes, you talked about VPN. VPN is great for tunneling and securing that communication. But what about the home network?
Yes, absolutely. And and a lot of times on the home network, there's more than just the employee using it. The kids are using it. Your spouse is using it. Everybody's using it for different things.
Right.
And there's so many traps out there that you can fall into. Whether it's a fake website looking for your credentials, or as we said, a pop-up, or a browser extension that you use so you can sign off on PDF documents or something like that. Everything potentially has danger involved in it.
Right. So now, one thing that I'm seeing, I don't know if you're seeing this as well, is news kind of related, spam, malware, pop-ups, anything along that line, where it's like the latest protest, what's going with COVID-19.
Yeah.
I know when the protest was really in the news worthy, where it's Black Lives Matter and all that, where there was some relative news, but then there was stuff that was, you got to question where it's coming from and the validity of the source.
Yeah, absolutely. And now a lot of the bad guys are actually putting malicious ads on legitimate sites. So you can go to your Samsung website, and you look to download a particular application, or of course Facebook and Google are notorious for advertising that looks like it's legitimate, but can be malicious. And it's there's not a lot of tools out there that help you stop from making that mistake.
And I think that's a challenge that I saw on Facebook a lot of times when there was concerns about malicious ads that are being posted, like you said, with malware involved, but there was no way for them to actually filter through, right? Yeah. So you're seeing all this information, and then when you go through, and if you're more connected, you kind of look at the URL and it's not CNN.com or
Yes.
City TV or Pulse 24. It's something else, and you're like, where's this taking me?
Yeah, absolutely. And that is the new battleground in my books is the mobility user. Whether it's a cell phone, whether it's a laptop, whether it's a tablet, whatever the case may be, the mobility user is, first of all, not a lot of them aren't used to being mobility users anymore, or at this point, and they are fresh fodder for all the bad guys to go after. I know that the stats show that over 80% of all breaches start with a phish. And the phishers now, even before people moved home, phishers were still they were 90% of phishing emails were stopped, but 10% were still getting through. And, and it was, and obviously they were making money because they kept doing it. Mm-hmm. But now phishers are moving from trying to fight all the tools that organizations bought to stop them from going. And now what they're doing is they're attacking the users as they traverse the internet, because as we were saying, there aren't many tools that stop that from happening. For sure. And so it is. And so instead of fighting tools that stop, what the phishers are doing is they're going after the weak link, which is the user. Mm-hmm. Because again, we're not used to that, and we're trying to do 8 million things at the same time, and it's becoming very, very lucrative for them.
Which is pretty crazy when you look at the whole scheme of things. That it's kind of like the animal mentality in the wild, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
The weakest, get attacked. The weakest are the prey, right? And it's not fair for, especially in the pandemic where people are going so much stress. They're overwhelmed with everything that's going on, and now they have to worry about being attacked.
Yeah, absolutely. It is absolute craziness out there. And, the scary part is, as much as we'd like to say that there's no silver bullet out there that stops these attacks from happening. And, whether it's an attack when you're traversing the internet, whether it's, an internal user who's now, searching through, looking at for HR documents so they know who George next door is making, and compared to what they're doing, whether it's a contractor who's left a port open, there's so many ways that people can get attacked these days. It really is crazy. And one of the things that actually concerns me about it, besides the obvious fact that there's so many ways and that people can get attacked, is that there are beginning to be a few organizations anyway that feel like they can just take their chances. They see their neighbor who's spent $500,000 on cybersecurity products and they still got hacked. Right. And so they say, well, why would I then spend that money when I can get hacked anyway? Right. And the downside of that is the fact that once they get hacked, which now seems to be inevitable, they don't take into consideration the amount of money that they end up spending because of the hack, or whether it's hard dollars or soft dollars. What they're doing is they're hoping that the news cycle is going so fast these days that once they've been hacked and people find out they've been hacked, there's so many other things going on, they're going to forget. How many people even talk about the Life Labs hack that happened not that long ago? Right. You rarely hear anything about that, or the Desjardins hack, or even the CRA hack. Right. Like, there's so many different things happening in the news, and the news cycle goes so fast that some of these organizations think, well, yeah, you know what, I'll take my chances, and for a couple of weeks it might be tough, but then people are going to forget, and they are.
Well, I think there's another side of that is that we don't hear about the class action lawsuits and things that are going on the back end too, right? Yep. Where they're actually being sued, but that's not media worthy, and it's not being in the publication that you're going to see on social media or the news and the main feeds. But those are things that companies have to pay out for. Then when you look at the company responsibility, I think that's something organizations need to think about. Yes, you got your PR and your brand reputation and all that is a concern, but the financial responsibility and negligence too. Like you have to think
Yes.
of due care and due diligence, right?
Yep. Absolutely.
And you have to do
Yes.
prudent, I'm studying the CISSP with a colleague of mine, and you have to do a prudent responsibility that a normal person in your role would do. Well, if you're just saying I'm not going to do it, well, that's not prudent.
No, it's not.
And
No,
then,
it's not. Which is one of the problems that Life Labs had.
right.
Right? They didn't want to spend any money on cybersecurity, and boom, they had to hack. And now there's all kinds of issues around that. And exactly what you're saying, like class action lawsuits. So there's and I always, when I talk to customers, I always say, look, there's the cost of a hack. There's hard dollar costs and there's soft dollar costs involved in that, and they're absolutely massive.
Mm-hmm.
So you're way better off to spend a couple $100,000 up front to do everything you can to stop the hack, as opposed to waiting till it happens and then having to pay. Have to go through the lawsuits and the employees leaving and trying to replace them, because that's something else we haven't talked about. There's such a shortage of security talent out there in the marketplace. Mm-hmm. It is so hard to replace a good security person. So, if you put them in a bad spot by not providing them with the tools they need, and then you get hacked, there's a dozen companies waiting in the wings to hire them, and they leave.
Right. That's true. So that brings me to, I know you started your company, WRI. Why did you start that company? I know you're working with different organizations. Why did you start your company?
Well, I started WRI because I spent 25 of the last 28 years working as the first Canadian employee for different US IT companies. And I started that with US robotics. And from there, I went to, I spent most of my time in networking. It's just the last 5 years I've been on the security side. But one of the things I learned over those years of working for US companies is that I found that late stage US startups, ones that had potentially disruptive technology and amazing DNA and lots of funding, rarely considered Canada to be a viable marketplace for them. Okay. So it wasn't until either the company got bought or they went public that they brought their products up to Canada. And at that point, we were paying 40% more for them than we would have paid for them if we'd bought them when they were still in startup stage. So, so I saw that as an opportunity. Not just for me to have some very cool products that nobody else had, but also for Canadian organizations to be able to be safer longer for less money than they would be if they waited for this technology to eventually get up here.
Okay, so you're really kind of trying to help support the industry, right, of knowledge as well as technology, and then security.
Absolutely, I am absolutely what's the word I'm looking for? Oh, geez, it'll come back to me. I lose it with age.
It's one of those days, huh?
Yes, it is. Yes, it absolutely is.
But it's I think, from hearing you and understand, like you've talked about the gaps in the industry, you've talked about kind of, the growth and changes of technology. So having that, I mean, it's so important to have trusted advisors, people that you can trust that are going to guide you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I found the word again. I'm an evangelist. That's what it is.
There you go.
It just takes me a little while. The scary part is, with the security industry growing as fast as it is, and the number of organizations that are jumping into security, it's become the Wild West, not just in terms of products that are out there or issues that you're going to run into for end users, but also it's the Wild West for organizations that are out there promising the world. Right. Like, and as I said, there's no silver bullets. Everybody, but you're going to run into organizations. I run into them all the time where I talk to IT directors and CISOs, and they'll say, well, so-and-so told me that this is going to fix all those problems. Well, no, it's not going to fix all those problems. And it's so, we're fighting misinformation as well as the bad guys. Right. And it can get pretty tiring sometimes.
Well, and I think on my side, because I mean, I'm a sales executive for Usado, and one of the things that you hear is that I'm fine. I'm
Yes.
fine. My security's fine right now. And don't get me wrong, I'm sure there's a lot of companies that are doing their due diligence and have a team, but being fine, has that benchmark, has that
Yes.
level, because things change. So I always recommend people is like, just keep in contact. Let me have, a couple minutes of your time just to share what we're doing with other companies. So at least you're at front of mind. Because a lot of times with
Yes.
these security people, they're 20, 30 projects deep. They don't have
Yes.
a lot of time to keep up on what's going on with the trends and everything like that. And that's understandable. That's being empathetic to their situation. Like you said, there's such a shortage in injuries, and the ones that are actually in the industry are extremely busy.
Yes.
Right. For
Yes,
them
they
to
are.
keep up on what's going on, what's the trends. And fortunate, like yourself and myself, we have partners and we have people that we work with that are always advising us what's going on, what to look for, what to be mindful of. And for us to share that information with our colleagues is, our due diligence, right? Is to be able to help them, because when the situation comes up that, hey, by the way, this is going on, we can say, look, hey, ransomware, this is going on. There's a 40% increase. They're attacking these types of industries. What are you doing? How's your backups? How's your different solutions? Have you done cybersecurity awareness training? Have you this? Here's some things that we're seeing. And this is the attack method they're doing. So they're sending out emails about the protest on Saturday.
Yep.
Just be mindful of these coming through. Bingo, right? They see massive value, but the ones are like, we're fine. The ones those are the ones for me personally. I'm kind of fearful, kind of like, if you think you're fine right now, you're probably not, and you're probably just coasting right now to maintain, and you're the company right now that has potential that you might get compromised.
Yes. And I was reading just last week that the article I was saying said the first death has occurred because of a ransomware attack, and there was a ransomware attack on a hospital,
Right.
and one of the patients was an elderly lady, and they couldn't get access to the medications that she needed, and she passed away.
Right.
As sad as that is, and it's one of the it's the first one I've heard of where somebody's actually passed away as a result. But ransomware has become, is so profitable for these bad guys now. And it's not even like the guys have to be all that smart. They just have to get on the dark web and buy a ransomware software thing that's being sold, and boom, away they go, and they're going after you.
Right.
So it's readily available, and it's scary, and people are starting to pay.
Well, I think the other side of that is that I've been hearing that from colleagues that do research on the dark web and do research on ransomware. There's actually companies, like they're physical companies where have 24/7 support. If you buy the ransomware, we'll support you through that and how it works and what's going on and what's happening. And if it's not working, we can show you methods and methodologies of how to make it work and like all that, and how to get your cryptocurrency and how to collect it. Like it's this whole process, like company solution. Like you'd get like Microsoft, hey, I have Office 365, I'm having problems installing it. It's no different from the ransomware now on the dark web. I'm hearing this, and it doesn't surprise me.
No, not at all. When you think about how much money these guys are making, if I was a drug lord, I would put away the drug stuff and get into ransomware. It's way safer, and it's you don't have to shoot people.
Exactly. You can do it from your home.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. I was listening to another podcast the other day, and they were talking about some of the students that have graduated at the top of their class in some of the Eastern European countries. I call them the stands.
Right.
And these bad guys are going out, and they're as to lure these kids in, they're offering them Ferraris and Lamborghinis as starting bonuses, and boom, get out there and attack some companies.
Right.
So there's so much money to be made out there. It really is mind-boggling.
It is. It's pretty crazy. I mean, with ransomware and everything, all the attacks, I know when I guess it was like 4 or 5 years back, I was at HP, and they had like a private event for security experts, and they were that was the time they came out that with the wolf, right? The YouTube videos. Yeah. I don't know if you've seen those. So then,
I have, yes.
So then one of them was exactly what we're talking about, how they'd be able to compromise a hospital and medical records and go through that whole process of getting access through a printer or a copier, getting the records, printing out certain records, changing the medication, putting I think it was at the point it was the director of IT, giving him, medication that you would put him to sleep for a bit. So now he's not even in contact. Right. And then what happens? They put him out, and then also they'd hack the company. So that was the first introduction I saw of what you're talking about with the hospitals. And that was 4-5 years ago. And at that point you're thinking, okay, hold on. If we weren't in cybersecurity, you kind of think that was a great movie. Yeah, it's like Mission Impossible. Haha, they're not going to do it. But in being in cybersecurity that we're kind of like, yeah, that's pretty possible. Like that's realistic. It's not the point where you're thinking like Star Trek where they have a transponder and, they have all the devices and you're like, oh my God, it's so futuristic. There's no way you're going to do that. And now it's like, literally like, no, that's an access point. They can get in there. They can transverse from there. And, if they start laying malware or, anything on the systems, now it's possible. They can lock down a whole hospital, right?
Absolutely. I was working with one of my vendors a few months ago, and he was saying that they actually they were working with an organization that had they had combination locks that were IT addressable to get into the different meeting rooms, and they found that one of them was trying to drop a load into the network. Okay. So it had been compromised. Somehow they got access to that, and they compromised it.
So that's the challenge, I think, when you talk about IoT devices.
Yes,
right? The things that have IP addresses connected. And I don't want to kind of call out any companies, but I mean, we start off with the baby monitors and companies like that, and it just kind of expanded from there. That they started to see like security, and you look at the CIA, confidentiality, data integrity, and availability. Availability was, you can access anywhere. You can access from work, on your phone. You can log in this IP address, and you can see everything that's going on. But the confidentiality and the integrity of the data wasn't thought of with these devices.
Oh, wasn't.
So then when it happens, you go, yeah, these guys can walk through, like it's just like a piece of paper. They walk right through and they compromise this. Now they're recording audio, they're recording video, they have access to the data, whatever that may be. And all the Internet of devices that now you see, from heating, lighting, to air conditioning, to, eventually you look at your fridge and your stove and everything else, these are all access points.
They certainly are, yes, and they can all be attacked.
Yeah,
it is absolute craziness, and the scary part is you can hear too much stuff about this and just be absolutely paranoid, right. Or you can get overwhelmed by it. It's very much like what's happening with the pandemic, right? You get overwhelmed by it and think, you know what? Maybe if I just don't think about it, it's not going to happen. So hopefully there's a middle ground we can find in both IT security and the pandemic that keeps people aware of what's going on and not panicking too much, but staying vigilant, as you were saying, and trying to make it as hard as possible for either the pandemic or attackers to get access to your house or to your business.
For sure. And I think that's where it comes to, like, it's always the worst times that these things happen. It's not like, oh, hey, I just did a training course in cybersecurity. I'm just ready. And now they come and hack me and everything's great and no stress. It's always at the times when you least expect it or you're going through the hardest times.
Yes.
Right? Pandemic's on. We're all, people are dealing with a lot of stress and what's going on with financially and the economy and everything like that. Family members might have it, they're going on that. And now there's a breach, or now there's an attack. And now you're like, oh my God, I just can't deal with this. It's just too much. And I think, and I one of the conversations I'm starting to have more with people is we need to take breaks. We need to kind of, do things for our own self-care because people are overwhelmed.
Yes, they are. They are, and particularly in IT security right now. There's they were busy to start with, and now with all of a sudden everybody being remote, and trying to make sure that everybody that's remote stays safe, and at the same time, they've got people like you and I calling them saying, "Hey, you got to see this new technology." Well, when am I going to see it? I'm so overwhelmed. It's ridiculous. So it's very hard to get past the noise to help these guys get things done when they're totally overwhelmed.
Right. And I think that's where I'm fortunate. Like for us, it's resource driven, like being an MSSP, right?
Yes.
Where they need resources right now. It's, we're not, value added reseller, and I've worked with them where they're great and they have new products and new solutions and new services. With Usada right now, we are a managed security service provider. So when they're short, they need help with compliance. They need help with that. We're there to kind of give them those extra hands and resources to help them through that. Because as you know, like, as you said, they're so deep in everything, forecasting, risk analysis, compliance, you name it, like that. They're just so overwhelmed. I mean, I've talked to some C-suite people and they're like, I need a break. I'm going to take a month off.
Yeah. Yes.
I just need a break to step away because I've been going 18 to 20 hour days, 7 days a week for the last 4 or 5 months.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Wouldn't it be nice to be able to take a month off?
It would be nice. Paid month off. But then we'd give the gap to the hackers and the attackers,
Exactly.
right? And then they'd have even more. If all the security guys took a month off, it'd be a free for all.
It would be.
Oh yeah. So I mean, it's pretty crazy. Now I know we were talking about deception, and you were asking a question, and I actually want to ask you, like, why should companies consider adding deception to improve their security posture?
Well, deception is something that's become more and more mainstream now. When I first started working with the deception company that I'm working with, a lot of organizations, they were very interested in hearing about it, but they said, "Yeah, no, I don't think we're ready for it yet." Well, now it's become more and more a necessity. When you think about different industries, you think about the military. The military uses deception all the time.
Okay.
You think about sports, deception's being used all the time in sports because it's really, really effective, and it gets the bad guys going the wrong way, and that's what's key. So right now, one of the big issues that everybody's coming up with is the fact that, as we've been talking this entire time, is there's no silver bullet, and organizations are getting breached. And whether it's a kid in his basement or it's a state-sponsored person, if they try hard enough, long enough, and they put enough resources towards it, they're going to get in some way or another. So then the challenge is, what happens once they're in? And right now, the mean time to figuring out that you've been breached has gone down from almost 300 days to just over 100 days.
Okay.
And still, 100 days of having a hacker in your environment without you knowing about it is massive, absolutely massive. And they can do an awful lot of damage in that amount of time. So what deception really is a post-infection notification. So it lets you know, hey, you've got a problem here, and this is where the problem is. Because as you and I both know, and I'm sure anybody that's listening knows, the bad guys are going to do all kinds of unnatural things to get past your perimeter. If you even have a perimeter at this point, with everybody working from home.
Right.
And once they get past the perimeter, they're all looking for basically the same thing, right? They're looking for weaknesses in Windows. They're looking for servers that haven't been patched for a while. They're looking to to escalate their permissions so they can get access to more and more important things. And that's exactly what deception prevents from happening. So what deception tools do is they actually project fake elements throughout in the inside of your network that look exactly like the real thing. So whether it's an end user or a server or a file share, it looks exactly like the real thing, and it actually looks more enticing to the user, to the attacker, to go after. So that if they make the mistake of going, and the thing I should have said is these fake or these projections sit on unused IPs. So there's no legitimate reason for anybody to be talking to them unless there's a problem. So when the bad guys get in, they want to sneak around, and they want to try to escalate their permissions. And the way they do that is they move laterally throughout the network and trying to find different ways to get more permissions, to do more things. So as soon as they start to work or try to what's the word I'm looking for? They're trying to
infiltrate.
communicate with one of the fake servers or file shares or whatever the case may be, right away, boom, there's an alert, and you know that there's a real problem. And the organization I work with, what they do is as soon as the APT or the bot starts trying to communicate with the fake server, it captures them, black holes them, and then gives you all the forensics on where they came from. Okay. So, but quite honestly, that's still not enough, because there's different types of attacks once people get past your perimeter. So there's the reconnaissance attack, which is the one we were just talking about, where users, or where the bad guys try to move laterally and they try to up their permissions. But there's also the stolen credential attack, where George from accounting goes to Starbucks and he does exactly what you and I were talking about. He doesn't have to go to Starbucks anymore because he's working from home.
Right.
And he downloads something that he shouldn't download, and he gets his credentials scraped. Well, one of the things that Ativo has done is they've also have a software that for all the end users that allows them to have fake credentials in their put into their laptop. So for every real credential that you can have up to 10 fake credentials. So what they do is they make the fake credentials look way juicier than the real credential, so that when they get scraped and the bad guy then tries to get access past the firewall into the network, the customer has a couple of options. They can either put those fake signatures into the firewall, so that the bad guy gets turned away right away and never gets access to the insides of the network, or they can let them go through and send them directly to the deception box, where they black hole them, and they can actually let them try, let them run some of their exploits to see exactly what they're trying to do. And sometimes the bad guys will actually let you know who they are by what they're doing, and you can turn around and have people arrested that way.
Right. Wow. Yeah, because it sounds like a honeypot.
You know what? It's a honeypot on steroids. Honeypots, were big and bulky, and they used a lot of resources. This is nowhere near that. It uses machine learning to learn your network and to put out the proper traps and the bait all over the place, and it's something that a number of customers have put it in, and then had red team exercises where red teams have come in and tried to breach, and have actually spent a couple days in the deceptive environment themselves, not knowing the difference. So it really is an amazing and an incredibly effective way to protect yourself, and to find out when people have actually breached. Because what the deception can do is take that 100 days of people being in your network and change it to less than a day. So that makes a huge difference as well.
Yeah, and I was just kind of looking up here briefly, because I know there's a big conversation about like user ND behavior and analytics, right? What you're saying is you're watching the user's behavior, right? I know a lot of times now they're analyzing, when they're logging in, what the areas they're going to, and if that changes, right? They show that now that if they're normally going to, and say they're IT, and they're normally going to software storage locations and data, and even say for like cloud solution, everything where they're working in development, but also now they're going to HR.
Yeah.
Right? Now they've switched. Yeah. Now the user behavior kind of goes, okay, hold on, red flag. That's not their normal behavior. Oh, and they're logged in at 2 a.m. because normally they're here from like 8 till 6 p.m. Why are they in at 2 a.m. and it's not their normal behavior? So I think all these new technologies, and when you're talking about deception and all that, I think all these new technologies are helping to better isolate and detect.
Absolutely, they are. And and one of the other things that not a lot of people think about that is a huge issue is 25% of breaches are insiders. So whether it's disgruntled employees, or whether it's contractors, or whatever the case may be, there's so many people that have access to get into a network, an organization's network, and there was a time when that was really important, to let other people into your network, whether it's a business situation or whatever the case may be. Well, now a bunch of them are starting to cause trouble, and there's no better way to find them than using deception to lure them to areas where they get caught,
Right.
and you find out that they're trying to do that stuff.
Now, I mean, going through like the history and kind of learning about, like, you know, a lot of companies provide this where it's information like threat feeds.
Yep.
What are the challenges around? Like, I mean, you're looking at deception as a tool to be able to monitor and to look over your environment. But a lot of times when you look at threat feeds, they're telling you methodologies and what they're doing, right? And what's kind of going in the industry. And I know you were talking just briefly, there's some challenges with threat feeds. What are those?
Well, threat feeds are wonderful things once organizations start using them, because what they do is they look for known problems out in the internet. So so they'll search the internet looking for bad actors. So that have put up malicious sites and things like that, and they feed that information back to the user. But the challenge comes in that once you start using a threat feed, one individual threat feed can only see so much. So how many threat feeds do you need to see that information? And then once you've got, the threat feed will give you the raw information. How do you interpret that? Where do you terminate the threat feed? Do you terminate it in your next generation firewall? Do you terminate it in your SIM? Both of which have a limited number of instructions that they can do at any given time. So what you're doing is you're degrading the performance of your firewall or your SIM by terminating the threat feeds into it. Then you've got to, as I said, then you have to interpret the results of that threat feed, and normally that's a person, that's an analyst that's sitting there trying to figure out exactly what you have to do in order to do that. So threat feeds are great, but they come with challenges. Okay. And so one of the products that I've picked up is a product that's called Centripetal Networks. And what Centripetal does is they were started by a guy who used to be responsible for the security of Air Force One, obviously before this administration. Right. But right. So he got together with some Secret Service guys, and they realized that this was a challenge. And they've developed an appliance now that can either be a physical or virtual appliance. They did a deal with over 100 different threat feed vendors, and they have over 3,500 threat feeds that they aggregate into their appliance, allow the user to put policies around it and interpret exactly what's coming out. And when you use this product, you can stop over 90% of the known threats that are out there in the wild. And known threats are responsible for 90% of the breaches, because people just, they know the threats are out there, but they just can't see them. What this does is it allows you to see them and stop them from ever reaching your infrastructure. Wow. So a very, very effective tool. It also will find users that have been that have been breached, that are now sending out information to the CNC, or the command and control. So it'll stop that from happening as well. So a very, very effective tool that can really help.
No, it sounds like it. I mean, that's great to be able to kind of look at that, because I mean, you look at like SOCs, with all the security analysts, and they're going through all this information, all this data, right? And it's care and feed. They're constantly modifying and upgrading, right, and tuning up the SIM to make sure that the company's not getting a mass amount of alerts because maybe there's a new threat that comes out. So you have to fine tune it constantly, and that's why you got SOCs that are working 24/7, always trying to modify and adjust.
Absolutely, and one of the huge issues around for all those analysts are false positives. There's so many false positives that they run into all the time, and you get fatigue from that, and a lot of them you'll just you won't pay any attention to, and that could be the one that's the real problem. Right, so for sure. So this helps stop the false positives. A product like a TiVo prevents false positives, because if you get an alert from the TiVo box, it's because somebody is talking to a fake endpoint or server that's on an unused IP. So there's no false positives. And with Centripetal, same sort of deal, right? they're stopping all the bad guys from. They're doing, they're doing. They're stopping the I guess the easy stuff from ever reaching your infrastructure, because those are the known threats. So they're stopping the known threats from getting there. So as a result, when you get an alert from your firewall or your SIM now, it's not something that isn't important. It's
Right.
something that
It's
hopefully will
actionable.
be important. Yes,
Right.
exactly.
It's actionable, and that you have to take
Exactly.
some sort of detection and remediation, right?
Yep.
Yeah, because you
Yep, for
detect
sure.
it, now you have to kind of investigate. So no, totally makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's quite a bit to cover even that. And I know like we talked about kind of SaaS applications, and I mean everyone's moving from on-prem to now cloud solutions, right? And maybe a hybrid solution or fully on the cloud now.
Yeah.
How's that changing the security landscape?
Well, what's really interesting about SaaS applications and how quickly they're being adopted now is really they abstract out a lot of your defense in depth that you've spent all this time developing, because now all of a sudden the data is no longer residing at on-prem in a lot of these cases that have gone completely SaaS, and so then the challenge becomes, first of all, where is your data? Because a lot of organizations will say, well, I've put in something like, say, for example, a CRM like Salesforce,
Mm-hmm.
and so all my salespeople and all my marketing people and all my my lead generation people are using Salesforce. So there's a ton of very important information in the Salesforce SaaS. Well, there's 85 different security parameters that you have to worry about per user for Salesforce, and 250 different parameters just for the application itself. So Gartner has told us that in the last year, 80% of all security issues with SaaS have been one of three things: either misconfiguration, mismanagement, or mistakes.
Right.
And you can understand how these poor guys can make mistakes, because they have to become experts in every SaaS that the organization goes to. And every SaaS has its own language. So it's like, you're here, and then, somebody sends you to Eastern Europe, and you have to figure out what the Eastern European language is, and set things up so that every connection has to be secure, and you can't be
Right.
Can't be leaking data, and that's a very, very difficult thing to do. And it's probably one of the major issues that we've got right now. It is the major issue with SaaS applications is misconfigurations, and because once everything is set up properly, then the SaaS provider takes care of the security. But a lot of organizations think, well, just because I have this SaaS application, Office 365, I'm good because Microsoft is taking care of everything. But they're not. If you have not set that thing up properly, you're on your own.
Right. And I think that's where you talk about kind of the shared responsibility, right?
Yes.
A lot of people don't understand that. Guys are doing their due diligence, and guys who are in the cloud kind of get that. But smaller companies and mid-sized companies that might not have the depth of the bench to speak to security consultants or experts in that field, assume that Amazon, Azure, whatever that may be, they have security, they're taking care of us. And
Yes.
Going back to that shared model is the data center, the access to the building, the access to the servers. Yes, they're maintaining all that, the hardware, they're doing that. But what you put on that, that's your responsibility.
Yeah.
You have
Yes.
to hire, you have to secure that. And a lot of times when I've talked to people about that, you can hear the, oh no, like, like we just transferred over. Like, what does that mean now? Like, what do I have to do? And having that conversation, you need to review it, like to go over. I had one company that had an MSP, an IT company that did their managed services that had them in the cloud, did a great job of that. But then when I asked them about security, they said, we asked and they didn't really kind of respond. Like they didn't get it back to us. I'm like, okay, you need to assess that now because of your intellectual property, your client data, if your financial records, if all that's online, right?
Yes.
And it's all now in the cloud and it's not secure. Now you're open to like being breached and a massive compromise. And
Yes.
And you just hear them like, okay, I got to go. I have to call them. Right. And
well, it's one of the huge issues with SaaS applications is who has access to building out the SaaS and connections to the SaaS, because every department in the organization, all of a sudden they might need more server space, or they might need something else. And the whole idea behind SaaS is to make it easy. Mm-hmm. Well, as they make it easy, as they're trying to get the new person on board, or they're trying to get this going on, a lot of times they don't have time to worry about the 85 security settings and the priority settings that where there's a waterfall effect, where there's somebody who has this permission, and as a result, there's other people who have subsets of that permission. But if they can get somebody on board faster, then that's what they're going to do. And a lot of times IT has no idea. So as a result, there's connections out there that are totally insecure, or they've got applications out there that are open to the internet, and that is happening all the time.
Right. And it's pretty crazy. I mean, when you look at least privileges rule, right?
Yeah.
And you kind of look at that you're just talking about with the least privileges, that were you part of one group and then you're part of another group and you're part of another group? Well, what does that combined permissions mean? What access do you have? And have you changed roles that someone hasn't taken those permissions away from you? Now you have access to multiple areas that maybe you shouldn't have.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So,
and SaaS now is the area where shadow IT happens more than any place else, where each individual department might set up their own little fiefdom and not get IT involved at all, and there's nothing but trouble that comes from that. And then the other side is compliance. How do you do compliance with SaaS applications? There's organizations will spend a ton of money bringing in analysts and bringing in consultants to make sure that compliance is done. Well, once they've spent that $200,000 making sure they follow, compliance is good, well, the next week everything's changed because it's a SaaS application and it can change. Mm-hmm. And so you constantly have to be watching for compliance and as well as all the connections and the shadow IT. There's just so much involved in SaaS applications that most organizations don't think about before they jump into them.
Right, and that's true. And I mean, I know for us, we have an MGRC program, which is Management Government Risk Compliance, and that was one of the reasons that it evolved, was because companies didn't have the time to manage a full program. They had the sweat equity of building it out, and once they build it out, then they would let it go. But as you said, there's so much change management that goes through on-prem, in the cloud, wherever that may be. But now you have to make sure you're monitoring your compliance and all your policies and your governance to make sure that when the time comes, then you're getting audited at the end of the year, for example, that now you're going through and going, okay, your disaster recovery, your business continuity, your this, is all that up to date? Your security plan, all that hasn't been up to date. No, we haven't touched it for 9 months since we finished this. Okay, well, I'll go get that done. You're like, I'm 20 projects deep. Like, what do you want me to do, right? The auditor's coming in on Monday next week. I don't have enough time or resources. So that's how it evolved for us for the MGRC program, was that we were hearing that concern. We were hearing that challenge of resources, of having not only experts in compliance, but even being able to maintain it and manage it throughout the year, so that what happens was when the auditors come in, here's your report. You have any questions for us? We can answer that. Here's we're up to date, and then they can move on, versus companies that are like, oh my God, the guy's coming in. Have we been auditing? Have we been tracking our logs? How long the logs have been audited? Has anyone been going through them? Like, just all these things where they're like, oh my God, like we're in trouble. We're in a lot of trouble now.
Yes, absolutely. I can't tell you the number of organizations I've been talking to where they say, well, yeah, I know that we're 3/4 of the way through this proof of value, and we want to bring in this new product, but we've got auditors coming in a month, and everything else stops.
Right.
It's exactly as you said. Yes, and it's absolute. And just the stuff we've been talking about today, it gives us an idea as to how crazy a CISO's life has to be, or a security analyst's life has to be, and so it's a pretty stressful situation for them.
It is, and that's why it's good to have consultants and people like us that are there to support, right, as a supportive role to help them take some things off their plate.
Absolutely.
It's pretty crazy. Now, talking about resources, I know before we started this, you were talking about you do some volunteer work and help some communities when it comes to cybersecurity and education. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I've gotten involved with a group called the Black Talent Initiative, and it really started after the whole George Floyd thing, and Black Lives Matters, and the whole idea behind it. There's a number of initiatives here in Canada, and a lot of them are pretty splashy and lots of high profile stuff. We didn't want to be that. What we wanted to be was a feet on the ground type organization that just got things done. So our goal right now is to provide mentorships and internships for Black youth. So when they approached me, I said, in the years when I was growing up and moving through my career, there was nobody that looked like me who I could aspire to. Okay. And I think that's, in a lot of situations, that's a very important thing for people to have. So whether it's somebody to just throw ideas off, how did you do this? I've run into this problem. How can you help me? And that's the kind of thing that we're trying to do, as well as some paid internships in some very interesting organizations. So we've got there's about 150 volunteers right now. We're still trying to get it off the ground. So we're still doing a lot of the grunt work that's involved in that. But we've got people from MLSE involved, and the Canadian, the NHL's involved, the NFL is involved. All the banks have participants in this whole thing, so it's exciting times. It's mostly marketing people at this point, but there's a handful of us IT guys there trying to make sure that we have our voice in the whole thing as well. So right. It's an exciting initiative, and hopefully the next time we talk, I'll have some even more exciting news for you about it.
Oh, some success stories too.
Yes, absolutely.
So now, through the volunteer work, just so I understand and people are listening, are they getting mentorship in the IT industry? Is that my understanding?
All industries right now. We're starting in marketing, so they're getting mentorships in marketing, okay. And a lot of it is, some of it's sports marketing, some of it's financial marketing, but just marketing in general. And then once we get that off the ground, then we're going to move into all kinds of different other areas. So it's the goal is to over the next year is to get 100 interns set up and at least 150 mentors set.
Okay. Wow. Well, it's just good. I mean, then it's good that you guys are traversing different industries too, right? Because I mean, marketing, being in the marketing industry myself, is such a saturated industry, right? For people coming up to understand it, like when it comes to like the younger generation talking about social media and all that. Great to know, great to understand, but to open up your own marketing agency or kind of break out to having a company, it's hard. It's, because there's so many people out there, right?
Absolutely, there are. Yes.
And that's why I was saying for security, hint, hint, IT, it might be a good industry because the resources that are required and needed for the industry is always growing in all different areas when it comes to security. So when you guys get that, please let me know and I'll share that out, because we always need great security people, right? We always need people that in different areas, because there's just so many avenues of security. It's not just, I'm just gonna be a hacker or a pen tester. There's so many different areas when it comes to cybersecurity to be able to get them up to speed and have mentors. Yeah, it'd be perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. And, and I think I was telling you, my son is at Sheridan right now studying IT security. Nice. So, so I'm hoping that, I can get WRI to the point where eventually he can take it over and run it into the ground.
There you go.
That's what kids do, don't they?
You hope so. You hope so. He has that drive, that business acumen. They do say the younger generation jumps a lot and changes and transitions. It's not a bad thing if anyone's watching this younger. It's just, to have that fortitude, that, resilience for business takes a specific mindset, as you know.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
And it's a good thing. I mean, if he has the fortitude to be able to do it, good for him, because as you know, it's just, this industry is constantly growing.
It is.
Right.
It's
constantly growing, and have a mentor like you to be able to mentor him through all, the business development, the consulting, the working with big, large organizations as he's coming out with all the expertise. It's kind of a great fit, and he'll learn so much faster, right? Where a lot of us a lot of us had to do it through sweat and labor, right? And just be able to do it on our own.
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, for sure. That's great.
Awesome. Now, if anyone's watching this, I know we've been talking a lot. And, if you guys have any questions, we have YouTube. You can ask a question. I'm monitoring actually on LinkedIn as well. Let's see if there's anything else. If anyone's mentioning on Twitter. But yeah, if you guys have any questions, let us know. I know there's several people watching this right now in this feed. Last question for you, Al. Where do you see the next 6 months going with cybersecurity?
The next 6 months, up until today, I thought the next 6 months was going to be organizations catching up on what they haven't done in the last 6 months. But now that I'm seeing that there's over 700 new cases here in Ontario, and same thing in Quebec. I'm worried about another slowdown. I'm dealing. One of the customers that I have is a credit union in Manitoba, and so they were ready to start doing some stuff, and they said, well, you know what, we can't right now because we're worried that wave 2 could really be worse than wave 1. So I'm hoping, the optimist in me says that organizations are going to try and catch up on all the stuff that they haven't done, and realizing, most of them, I'm sure, have had issues on the security side, since they sent everybody home, and I'm hoping they're going to try and catch up. And the pessimist in me says, yeah, we might be looking at March again. Right.
Yeah, I think that's hard. I mean, we were talking this before the podcast, that there was actually a protest in Toronto on Dundas Square on Saturday. And, I get it. Like, people are kind of frustrated because now everything was getting locked down. But as we're talking, and this is my opinion, is that the hard part is that, how this is spreading right now is through contact and through close contact. And you've got all these people now commuting, into a focused area, not wearing masks, doing that, and now potentially sharing this around. And you look at the spike over the weekend, right, of everyone now, the numbers, and I won't be shocked if the next couple of days you see the numbers go up, 800, 900 to 1,000, right?
Absolutely. Yes.
And now, now they're going to be even more lockdowns. It's like, we're at such a hard place. And I think it's people being isolated, people being kind of, controlled in environments. People are getting frustrated. Right? They're getting kind of isolated. They're getting that shell shock where they need to get out. They need to, communicate. They need to do that. But it's new times. It's not something, and I was talking to my wife about this, was it last night? You can't predict. You can't plan right now. You strategize for the best, and then work the plan. Keep working the plan. Keep being dynamic with it, because at the end of the day, it might change. It might change again.
Absolutely.
It might change again. So you can't go, this is my plan for the next 1 year. This is my plan for the next 6 months, and this is what's going to happen. Because in 1 week, 2 weeks, it could change.
Yeah. You know what? I make my plan each week.
Yeah.
And try to work the week plan and see where it goes from there.
Yeah. And I mean, for me, like, I have a strategy that I'm going kind of long-term, 30, 60, 90 days, kind of playing it out. And then I'm staying flexible, because if it changes, then I'll modify it. Right? And then I'll modify it, and I'll keep doing that, because, you have to be dynamic in this point. And especially with all the things that we see, having that risk mindset, you realize that how fast you have to change.
Absolutely, you do. Yes.
Right. Yeah, so it's kind of one of those things. I think for us is kind of like, you breathe, go for a walk, have a drink, whatever that may be, and then you get back at it. You kind of go, okay, look, this is what I need to do.
Yes. Yes, for sure.
So awesome, Al. Any other points you want to finish off with?
No, you know what, Brandon? Thank you so much for giving me the time today. I've really enjoyed this. I hope we can do it again sometime, and I hope that everybody out there stays as safe as possible and doesn't do what I did and click on things that you shouldn't be clicking, and stay safe, everybody.
Yeah, and I think one of the things. Now, I'm going to ask you this, because I was looking through my notes here. Where's the best place for people to contact you?
Best place would be email address. My email is awhite@wricanada.com.
Okay, perfect. And I'll actually have that in the description, the show notes.
Fantastic.
So you guys can, reach out to Al if you have any questions about, security, kind of what's going on that side, but also about your program, right? That is going with mentoring and all that. And,
absolutely.
And stay connected with
love that.
Because again, right now, having a mentor, people transitioning, losing work, having, needing help. It's good to have people that are out there that are going out and helping people right now.
It really is. Yeah. It's time for an amazing opportunity to give back.
Yeah, for sure. And I think one of the things for myself, and a lot of people that are getting my calls right now are frustrated because they think it's a sales call. But technically for me, just like we're doing right now as through this conversation, it's really about having that dialogue in the conversation. How are you doing? What's going on? Is there anything that I can answer for you? Is there anything my team can answer for you? Because I know the initiative for Usada right now is to help people right now, help companies as we're going through this. It's new times. It's not people just don't know what's going to happen. So at least if they can stay secure through this on our standpoint, at least we're doing our due care. We're caring about companies and we're caring about the economy. We're caring about Ontario, even, Canada, North America. We're doing our best to just do our part. Because then whenever we get back on our feet, at least the companies, survived and weren't, breached or hacked or compromised, which is the worst thing. And I mean, I don't know how many people you've talked to, going through a breach, but I know for me, it is like so stressful at that time. But now add everything else that's going on with the pandemic, it's just like, it's a nightmare and they're overwhelmed, right? So you're overwhelmed and now you get breached. Yeah, it's like, why bother? I'm just done. Close the doors. They can have everything.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. No, I think, I think you guys are doing exactly the right thing. And there's so many organizations out there that need the kind of help that you provide. See, when I call them, it is a sales call.
Yeah.
So
fortunately, we're doing more of a consultative, but I mean, people need what they need, right?
Yes.
Right. They need, and we're more of doing the consultative role right now. It's just because we understand, the stories. Like for me, the conversations that I've been having with some great people, hearing the stress, hearing what they have to go through, hearing all that. And it's like, it tugs on your heart. You're sympathize with them. Like, I wish I could, help you or do more. Like, I wish I could come out to your company and, help you out. But here, this is what I can do up to this point. Like I can answer questions. I can give you some guidance. I can give you like a roadmap just to kind of give you some ideas of where to go, things to look out for. Like here's the things that we're hearing. We've talked to companies in your industry. This is what's going on right now just to keep you, abreast of the situation. And at least,
absolutely.
Doing those things just to keep them up to date, I think is, it helps me kind of feel good about what I do versus, working for older companies, years ago when you're sales, it's just kind of like, doesn't matter. They need this. You need a Cisco switch. You need it right now. You need this. And it's like, they don't need that right now. They need help.
No, they don't. Yes, they absolutely do.
So perfect. Well, thank you so much, Al. This was great. I really appreciate your time. And yeah, if you guys want to email Al, it's Al White at
A White. Yep.
At WRI.com.
At WRICanada.com.
Okay, perfect. So I'm going to put that below in the description so you guys know that. And then you guys are able to email Al and just, ask him any questions.
Absolutely. Brandon, thank you again. I really appreciate this.
Oh, thank you. So I'm just going to end off here. So guys, thank you so much for watching this. I hope you got a lot of great information. I know we covered phishing, SaaS, cloud, deception, a lot of great information on how to protect yourself, especially when it goes on to cybersecurity, what's going on in the industry and the pandemic. I hope you and your family are safe right now. I know there's a lot going on when it comes to cybersecurity, the pandemic, all the different challenges that are happening. So stay safe. I hope you and your family are safe. And contact myself or contact Al if you have any questions. So just don't forget, software is hackable, being connected is vulnerable. I'll see you next Daily Cyber.